DevOps platform, as like awesome and big as that is, like I just was wondering out loud, like, how can you frame your why even bigger? And you start to do that, Todd, in that video. And I think I'd love to engage in the conversation against that. But that was the first part. The second was really how you connect the why to the how to the specific use cases. And I think you're starting to do that. I see like the 10 verbs are really well expressed. I see that even the benefit statements are great, right? So single source of truth, continuous everything, real-time security. I know that that's not really where you fully differentiate, but I do think that great brands and great companies, like I believe you are, connect all the tissue and connect all the verbs, if you will, or the why to the what to the how. And again, so I saw opportunities to do that. And again, it sounded like you're starting to go down that path. Those were the two things off the top that I said. And then you shared the video, which clarified a couple things for me as well. So happy to go into what I see and still challenge on one dimension, but really just engage in it back and forth to see, like, how are you thinking about it? What are you learning?
I think, Chris, I think it's great that Todd shared our recent materials, but I'd love for you to like kind of almost put that to the side and just give us like, what would you do if you'd had to position this and articulate the value?
Yeah, I'm thinking about how much success you've had with your all remote messaging. And I was wondering why that is. I think it's because there's a much, much bigger purpose in the world that needs to be solved, right? And again, I think you guys were so credible and authentic in expressing and being helpful in a way that was really synonymous and authentic to your brand and your values, right? The notion that you were open sourcing and sharing something that was so timely and then so darn helpful, right? I can't remember the number of times I referred people to your handbook, and specifically the remote part. So when I think about like pushing beyond words like digital transformation and the fact that we need to think differently about software, I think we need to think differently about company building and how we operate, period. And that's to me, that's the why that I think you guys started to touch upon in a very real way with all remote. And I push the thinking a little bit there to really start about not just like how software gets done, but how we need to rethink products and how do we need to think about companies and how we operate together. I think the next level down would be developers matter more than ever. And then the next level down would be, okay, therefore they need tools and platforms to enable to do their work to unleash the full power. Have you guys seen Jeff Lawson's work with Ask Your Developer?
Twilio?
Yeah, Twilio, yeah.
I feel like I have, but now I'm looking it up again.
The reason I bring that up is because I think Jeff articulates, even though it talks about a developer, I actually think he makes the case for how the world is different and how products and companies need to operate is as well as I've heard. So the first half of his book really talks about this, right? Like the need to actually think through like the mindset of a developer. And again, it actually gets pretty tactical in the second half. But I actually think the framing around, okay, what does it mean to solve real problems? And what does it mean to empower developers? Like that's all fertile territory for companies like you, I think. And like that's the part I would connect rather than saying, look, we have this developer ops platform. Oh, and by the way, we can therefore think differently about how we build software and how we build product. I would challenge you to invert that, right? Because I think you have authenticity, you have the brand permission, I think, to say, like, look, like we're one of the players that's helping shape how companies operate. We're also helping shape companies in their building of software. Oh, P.S., by the way, we have this platform that does all these magical things all in one application, right? So like if I had to just push on one thing, that'd be it. Just to invert the why at an even higher level. And you guys have it embedded in some of the taglines that you use. If I go back, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but it's innovate. What
Yeah.
What is that? Iterate faster, innovate together.
Faster, innovate together. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll pause there. Like, what do you think about that?
I just want to make sure I understand what you were saying, which is go ahead and claim a bit more ground relative to we're changing how companies are operating. And then and sort of claim some victory there and use proof points for that. And then dive down into the tool after that. Is that kind of what you were saying? More than just development?
Yes, direct. Yes. Because you do more than just development. I think you change companies. My favorite example, Todd, is Stuart's. We don't sell saddles around here, and the gist of what he's saying is we're not replacing email. We're not selling chat. We're actually selling organizational transformation, like the way in which people stay in touch with one another, how they communicate, how they stay in touch with what's happening at their company. And I get chills when I think about that memo, and I've read it 100 times. And like, why is that? Like, it's because he's touching a much higher order why. And I'm just challenging you guys to get to a similar level. And I think you can. And I think you have a proof point of it, right? Like you guys, when people think of all remote, there's no other company that comes to mind in the people that I talk to. That's a good example in my mind.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. The hard part as a marketer or as a positioner is how do we make that claim in a unique way? So, because at the end of the day, you sort of abstract out into this, we make work better, we make companies better. Well, there's a bunch of companies who claim, like, when does it start sounding like Slack or some other company? And trying to find that uniqueness there. And I think that's why we really leaned into the values part, because how we do that is unique. And you can see that in our company culture. But I'd love your thoughts on that. How do you make a bold claim about changing companies, but also keep it authentic and differentiated?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. It's hard, and it's the connectivity all the way down. To me, I think the why needs to connect to your what, and then it connects to your how on one level. The other level is actually both a rational and an emotional benefit. So again, let's use the remote positioning as a good example, because it's about as good as I've seen.
Yep.
Why does that work, right? It works because you actually have rational, like factual suggestions. The product works, right? Like, again, there are lots of different opinions about how you go remote. You have a very specific, somewhat opinionated point of view on this. So like the rational performance side of the product, if that were a product, works. And then the emotive side says, gosh, you had empathy, right? For a world. And your empathy wasn't just like, we have an opinion, yes, it works for us, but like, you're not saying there's only one way to do this. You're saying lots of different ways to do it, but this is the reality we all find ourselves in a global pandemic. So like, it works on a, like, why? Well, why? We want to include everyone, right? Everyone includes everyone wherever they happen to be. It happens to include everyone in the company. And I think that's fertile ground too for your higher order thing. It's not just dev, right? Your positioning relative to GitHub rather, is exactly that. It's about more than the developer. It's about everyone. So I think that there's a broader positioning both on the rational side and the emotional side. And then it's the connectivity down to the value drivers that you're describing. And I think you made a point in your video that a value driver alone doesn't necessarily sound that much different than anybody else. Everyone wants, to move faster and have security and those sorts of things. But actually the way you've articulated is really nice. Those three short expressions and then how they connect to the 10 verbs, I think is you guys excel there. So those are thoughts, right? It's like, it's the connectivity up and down. And then it's like, are you working a rational and an emotional message so you achieve resonance in your brand in the eyes of the people that you care about? Does that make sense, Todd?
It does. We had a message for our GitLab commit that was really successful last year that we've continued to use a little bit, which is "You belong here," which I thought was a really kind of powerful articulation of everyone can contribute. It's like, no, we want you here. And sometimes I think we should maybe continue on that messaging a bit more. We want you to here because we want everyone here. So kind of interesting.
Yeah. So I don't have like the words and all that stuff, but
right.
the thematic things you're describing are so powerful, right? Belonging, right? Like, wow, like so much bigger. And then, inclusivity, right? Like all these voices, because again, if I were constructive about the work that Jeff did, because it's amazing, the titling of it actually gets in the way, because the real message is like, hey, all companies are technology companies, right? We need to think differently about how we build these companies, how we build the products, how we solve real problems, and how we actually include everybody in this journey. It's not some, old school way where some part of the company goes and specs out a problem and then hands it over to somebody else. I think that's kind of what you guys are talking about here, is including everyone, really solving real problems. The benefits and then the products are downstream. And I really think you guys are onto a very powerful set of themes, which, again, I don't think many companies in the world have access in an authentic way, because your values are real, right?
Yeah.
And you live them.
Yeah. So Sid, do you want to verbalize 6?
Yeah, I'll skip to 7. I'm just trying to, like, I agree with the suggestion. It's just like I'm trying to like implement it, and I'm not there, but I figured I'd share what I have now so we have time in this meeting to actually get somewhere. So something every company is driven by software and needs to become software first. And GitLab is leading the way with all remote, faster, more inclusive decision making, iteration, transparency, and working handbook first. That was all I had so far.
So I'm going to challenge one thing, is that I think every company needs to be a software company is tired. And
Sure.
and in fact, like, while I agree with you, Chris, that I like what Jeff did with Ask Your Developer, except for I think that sort of everyone can contribute is way more than developers. I'd like it better if it was like everybody can be a developer, everybody is a developer, or something more like that, because I think that I don't know. I think we have a bigger message than that. I just haven't, fully put my finger on it yet. But I'm sort of tired of the developer as kingmaker trope, because I think what we're really saying is we want everybody to participate in the development process now. You have to think like a software company, but you don't have to necessarily be one. I don't know.
Todd, can I build on that?
Yes, please.
That is, so just to build on the things that I think are tired, right? In the challenge, I don't have a unique suggestion. I have some thoughts, but that's not the purpose of wordsmithing this. But I think digital transformation, software eating the world, and my point was like everyone's a software. I agree, they're all tired, so there's better ways to say them. But actually, I do think the mindset that is reflected in Ask Your Developer, that's kind of my point, is Jeff's message is exactly what you just said. Is like everyone's a developer, right? It's a mindset, right? Whether you're in sales, you're in customer support, or you're actually a developer. It's the problem-solving mindset, and it requires what you said very beautifully. What you just said there about how inclusivity. So I'm with you, and I think the trick here is to avoid the tired platitudes of software eats the world, digital transformation, and the things about inclusivity, like a mindset of problem solving, using, again, I think finding the words matters, but you have the themes and they're powerful.
Yeah, I like that. And you're right. Like the message underneath ask your developer is strong. I think you're right. I think the ask your developer just takes a little bit of I don't know, it takes something out of it, honestly.
Agreed. So I think you have an opportunity, right? To like, but I also do see it come through even in how you describe your pricing tiers, because it's DevOps this, Sec DevOps, and again, like comes back to do humility, because I'm not your target customer. I mean, per se. So I might, it might just be me. Like it might well be perfectly articulated for the target audience. I just don't know. And you're doing research all the time with your customers, so you'd know. But again, I think I challenge you all to just, for at least the why part that you're really wrestling with, and it sounds like you're getting good feedback from your team. Like what does that authentically look like? And if it has to do with openness, inclusivity, beyond just developers, I mean, wow, there's a lot of potency in those themes.
Let's see. I am so I'm going through kind of your original. Let's just throw this one out there for fun. So the analysis we did on Complete DevOps Platform was that kind of two major points. One is it doesn't seem like a sustainable advantage. It's an advantage now, but it doesn't seem like something that is differentiated for long. So let's say GitHub builds a bunch more features, JFrog acquires some more stuff, and all of a sudden they have a complete DevOps platform. The other piece of feedback is that
it's a public call, and I want to say that I think the odds that we're very far ahead, and I think it's a defensible advantage for many years to come. But please do continue, Todd.
Okay. The second thing that happens is when you're talking to real customers, it actually starts the conversation wrong, because they're like, okay, or whatever, complete, but tell me what you're really good at. And so then we have a conversation with real customers that say, well, SCM and CI is where you should start, but if you have your favorite security tool, or if you have your favorite observability tool, you can plug those in just fine. And that's the conversation that McBride, our CRO, has all the time. They actually pitch it as sort of a future state, which is great. But the real conversation is, okay, yeah, I heard you say complete, but I've got to stick with this, and that. And then we talk about, well, what can you replace? What can you start with? How can you, over time consolidate your tools, which also works, but it sets off the conversation a little bit differently. So one of the reasons we are testing open is because it brings that sort of inclusivity into our message, and it is defensible vis-a-vis our main competitor, who is proprietary. So we are open source. There's this great quote from Siemens that says, GitLab makes us act open source in how we develop our software, more collaborative, more transparent, more open. And so there's a lot to do there. But I'm interested in your perspective on sort of open versus complete, or if they're even just different. And you can see, we're going to continue to use complete when we talk about our features, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the thing that resonates is the challenge that one gets unless you're like I don't even qualify it. We're just oversold to all day, every day, every one of us in all aspects of our life. So like I do think there's value for this being a system that works together, and the fact that it's open source is huge. But I think that is actually a classic kind of marketing and sales positioning challenge. So like I like where you're going to say, like, don't show up and try to say you're going to solve everything for, like, this is not what you're saying, by the way, but like it probably lands like, oh boy, here we go again, right? Company X, come here to solve, cold fusion and everything all at once. Yeah. And by the way, even though like that's what you just try to avoid, that kind of like somewhere in our reptilian brain, it's like, my bullshit detector goes off. And so how do you enter into it? Usually you enter into it with like a very specific understanding of what the problem is that they're wrestling with at that one point in time. And you guys have had the success that you've had in part, I believe, because not only you have great products and it hangs together, but you figured that out, right? You guys are getting into those conversations and have good messaging. So I think like that can't be part of the initial foray in, right? That we're going to solve all your problems, right? I think the themes you're describing will get you in, and then the products itself, they're uniquely solving a benefit statement at that kind of value driver level will win you the business. So I like it's interesting, right? Because you talked about bookends. What we're talking in your video, what you're talking about is somewhere in between there in sorting out those messaging, and how you position yourself. The open part that doesn't surprise me that really, really resonates. I do think, like, again, I don't know the competitive landscape of your products vis-a-vis others as well. Like, it's not my area of expertise, but I do think there's benefits to having the parts actually work well together. It's just a matter of how you articulate and position them and not overpromise.
Yeah, agreed. Hey, Sid, you want to articulate 13?
Yeah, I'll have another stab at this. I'm not sure I'm there, but I'll keep trying. So every process is implemented in software, and the speed of change is accelerating. To keep up, organizations have to iterate faster, and everyone must be able to contribute. New ways of making decisions, more transparency, and new communication practices are needed, and GitLab is leading the way.
Yeah. That's actually really close to the new messaging, that framework. But you've actually flipped it a little bit, which is interesting, is sort of to keep up, organizations have to iterate faster and everyone must be able to contribute. We put that after, and maybe that needs to sort of go first, which is, hey, here's a way. Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
I think that's the same thing Chris was saying at the beginning. Like we have to flip it. Now we're putting kind of the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What are these, like, statements you're coming up with or testing out?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yes, he's writing them in a document. Sorry.
Oh, got it. Okay, that's cool. I just want to make sure I'm following along. I like that. I really do. And like, the only thing, the kind of the air cover that's required for that is a little bit of that ask your developer and these themes we're talking about. They're like the context of the world, right? The inclusivity, the openness, how we think, speed, agility. Like it's saying those things without, like, being authentic to who you are and without tropes and like tired old cliches, because like no one needs more of those. But that's pretty damn powerful, what you just said. I don't know. I can't imagine someone not resonating with that.
Cool. Thanks.
My pleasure. This is fun. You guys, like, I think if you unlock that, like that bit, I think the rest is just, I mean, it's just awesome. And it sounds like you're getting good feedback, Todd, from the team. And
We are.
I'll state the obvious, right? But people often forget about marketing's first job is actually for your team, right? So they have, like, they're inspired to carry forth the message, and like that you're starting there is somewhat counterintuitive for people, but I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, it was cool. We got 10% of the company to give us feedback on our messaging, which I thought was pretty good. More would be better, but that was a pretty good start.
Very cool.
Hey, Chris, you also mentioned pricing, and I think I want to show you something. I think our pricing should improve, and the descriptions, and made a proposal on how to do that, that I hope to see implemented any day. We have the different stages, and the thing is, the those stages are not part of the pricing. So it's not like you pay for 3 stages here and then 5 here and then 10 here, which really helps us with kind of natural expansion and net retention, but does make it much harder to kind of position the product.
Said another way, we have one product. We basically have one product that adds features, but it adds features from various stages.
Yeah. Well, let me start with the positive. It said you guys used to have 4 tiers. It was even more confusing, you know, and it wasn't just the fact that I'm not your target customer. I was like, oh boy, so you're moving in the right direction. The way in which you've done it has been very thoughtful and customer friendly, because like sometimes people make these changes and don't grandfather properly, et cetera. Like, in the work that I've been exposed to around pricing, I think this is overwhelming, and this actually proves one of the point I was making before is the connective tissue, right? So the goal is that like it works on a lot of levels, and your pricing should reflect, something that's clear to the target audience, and they understand it. If they had to explain back to you your pricing, I think they might have a tough time. I mean, I could be wrong, so you guys can tell me. Maybe I'll pause there. Do people understand it? Beyond it just being new and early.
I don't know, Hannah, if you have an opinion on that. Hannah runs our SDR organization, so they're probably getting pricing questions all the time. Is that something that comes up?
Hey, Chris. I don't hear it that frequently from the SDRs, but that being said, they do a ton of training when they're onboarding on navigating those conversations. So not to give them all the credit, but I do think they do a fantastic job of navigating that and guiding the customer after doing an initial qualification. So I'd be curious to ask, to say, hey, if you're talking to people who you haven't chatted with yet, who've really been shopping online, what's their feedback? But SDRs are pretty loud with their feedback, and I haven't heard that one yet.
Okay. I mean, the one thing I'd always encourage people in pricing is like align the different tiers or different packages, if you will, with the value that the customer sees uniquely, and then articulate that in plain spoken language. And so that's what I just challenge a little bit again with due humility. Like the words in there, even at the top level, the description feels a very, very developer centric to me. So maybe there are different ways to experiment with different languages to explain the different tiers at that level. Maybe not. Maybe it's just right. And then the other one is like, rather than checkbox, like how mobile phone companies sell their features, like where it's checks and stuff, that can be overwhelming for certain people. Is like try to roll it up in a way that says like, okay, this tier, there's like, it's really these 3 things. And then you can collapse almost like a collapsible, arrow. Anyway, just food for thought.
Sid, what's the latest iteration that you've suggested?
Yeah, what I suggested is having like 5 benefits that were a plus, and you can expand them. And I think we did manage to at least put them all in the different boxes. So thank goodness for that. No longer the big table. So I think it's a great improvement. Mm-hmm. But I think we keep struggling with the grouping of different features. So I think it will be, I'm happy to like spend 50 minutes and I'll group them, and then we can test that. And then hopefully that does better what it is now, because it seems we've been going back and forth on grouping for a very, very long time.
We did actual user data on that. We need to find that, because we did sorting exercises with real users.
Yes, but I don't see it reflected on the pricing page. And I saw the outcome of that, and it was interesting.
Let's see if I can find that. Yeah. But yeah, it may not be right, but yeah.
Yes. So something to consider is like, when I say, like, I like the words you use, value drivers, because value drivers to me is kind of what Sid just said, the benefits. Like, what are the benefits articulated in plain spoken language that that the person who's making the decision cares about. And then, yeah, Sid articulated better than I did. Like he just said, like the benefit statement when you have a plus thing to go underneath. So I'm a big fan of like simplifying through less broader benefit statements or value drivers, whatever term you care to use. And again, like you guys have a good handle on what value people derive from your products. So like the translation of the wording to your pricing page will really help. Actually, to your point, to Hannah's point, like you reinforce it at every stage too, right? When you're introducing the customer, but your business is so expansion dependent, right? So people need to understand at every stage of the life cycle, like, wait, where's the value and how do I pay for that? What's my relationship with you on this? Like, so that's why you need to reinforce it all the way across. I mean, again, I'm stating the obvious here, but I think that, you know, the degree to which these things actually are like self-reinforcing and are consistent across life cycle, across, you know, roll up, roll down, that's when things just really start to sing.
Cool. Todd, if I make a proposal of what to put on the pluses, can the marketing run an A/B test on that?
Yes.
Cool. I'll make one.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Chris. This was great.
You guys, so welcome. Thanks for including. Thanks for listening. And like also embracing the spirit with which the feedback's coming from. I just like really admire the company and all you guys what you're doing. So, but I also again submit these things from a very small context. But
I think they're taken as that, and I'm really proud where we have a company where like I can bring the CMO in and they're not offended and they actually push back and they'll like give spirited answers. That's the company I want to work at. So I think this is
absolutely
great.
No.
Yeah, and I take all the free help I can get. So I'm good with that.
No, but actually it does speak to where we started this conversation. Like when you describe who you are, it talks about values, and everyone says a lot of stuff, but they actually don't really mean it. And you guys do, right? You're talking about openness and transparency. And
most people talk about values. They're talking about values. This is genuine, and it's just talking about benefits on the pricing page. These are not benefits. Yeah. These are.
All right. I'll leave it there. Sid and Todd and Sados and everyone, thank you for letting me join you guys for today. Best of luck. Keep up the great work.